Hi Year 11, welcome to your feedback for your first preliminary business studies task. So well done on having completed that. It's a really important process for us to not only complete assessment tasks, but to also really reflect on how we've done in the task, as well as where we plan to head from here. This idea that your feedback that you are going to get for your assessment task is going to become invaluable. And if you don't spend the time and do the activities properly, you're not going to get the right results in the future or reap the benefits that you can from the feedback that you are given. So hopefully you have this printed sheet in front of you, and I will talk you through this feedback, and at times you'll be asked to pause so that you can complete any activities that is being asked of you. Your question was to discuss the global expansion of one Australian business, and it was a very open-ended question, and obviously you had the choice of which company or business to choose, and most of you chose really good businesses. One thing I will say is that a few of you chose businesses that did not have one specific purpose, so like Westfields or Wesfarmers. They were more difficult company structures to choose because what they actually supply is not as simple as something like Boost Juice or Qantas. So keep that in mind as you move forward with the examples that you're going to choose about whether or not they're the easiest examples for you to explore. You know that you were given these components of the questions, the first bit on stakeholders, the next bit on classification, and then the last content section on influencers. One thing I want to draw your attention to is this idea of the rubric. Now, in an exam, this is all you get, which is the rubric. So you might want to annotate that there. This is what you get during an exam. The criteria you are given with a hand-in response. So you knew that you needed a comprehensive and sophisticated discussion. Not a general discussion, not a sound discussion, but comprehensive and sophisticated. So for a take-home task like this, it's really important that you really break down this criteria and seek some extra clarification of your teacher if required. Okay, this is going to be your first pause point. You need to pause this recording now and reread your whole response. This may take you 5-10 minutes, completely fine. When you are done rereading your response, your work, and taking note of all of the in-text feedback I gave you, I really want you to spend some time thinking about how that in-text feedback can be a strength of your response, or possibly that in-text feedback is highlighting a weakness. So pause this now, reread and complete the table using the in-text feedback. Alright, you should now have this table completed, and we're now going to move on to this idea of feedback around skills and feedback around content. Skills are more focused around how to answer the question, how to construct a response, and the content is rather focused on what is given, so the actual syllabus or content knowledge. It is important that we focus on both. Okay, now we know that business studies is a very content heavy subject, and at times you will feel like we are learning lots and lots, and that is true, but it is also important that we look at our skills. So our skills that we build and develop in prelim are going to transfer to our HSC, and this is really, really important for us to work on. So one thing I will say is that we really need to focus on our ability to interpret the question. Our ability to figure out what does discuss mean, what does global expansion mean, and how can I link this to a relevant business. Another skill that you need to develop is your structure. Okay, at times people's responses were a little bit unclear, they were muddling their ideas, or they were actually including general information that wasn't necessary. Okay, so it's really important that we look at this idea of cohesion in our writing. Another point to bring in business studies is the use of evidence and data. You need to be supporting your business studies concepts with real evidence and data. And this is this idea of prove it. Okay, I might have written that on your response, prove it, or where's the evidence? And a few of us were making claims, but they're not supporting it with actual data. And my last concept here is something that I think is important, and it's to be brave. If you think it is a strong impact or a significant or a limited, or it had a great benefit or it had a negative impact. Be brave in creating that judgment or thesis. So what I want you to do now is to have a look at this scale. You're going to rate yourself as 1 being not confident at all and 10 being as confident as possible on each of these 4 skill areas that I've just gone through with you. So have a think about your response, have a think about how you're feeling now, and where do you rate your confidence level? Pause and have a go at that now, please. All right, you should have this filled in with your confidence level now, but I really want you to think about how do you plan to improve these? And this how is really important. Literally, what things are you going to do to help you improve on that for next time? All right, write down some ideas now. Okay, we are now finished looking at our skills section of our feedback, and we're going to start focusing on content. I have created a bit of a content checklist here for you, and you really need to reflect on both your whole text comment from me and your in-text comment from me. Do I know my content is 100% correct? You might want to annotate here. I don't want you to guess. I don't want you to make it up. I don't want you to assume. It needs to be 100% accurate. Meaning, have you got it from a textbook, a resource your teacher has given to you, or a reliable site? Okay, some of us provided information that wasn't 100% correct. And in a hand-in response, guys, it's really not acceptable. One of the biggest problems with students' responses was providing irrelevant content, meaning it was correct, you hit the first checkpoint, but it wasn't relevant. People were giving me a history of their business. That's not what the question was asking you, and you wasted words because you didn't provide relevant information. My other content checklist, and the last on our list, is have I provided enough depth? Did you actually explore a concept or did you mention it? Some people used definitions, and in business studies, it's great to provide definitions. So maybe if you didn't provide any definitions, this may help you to draw out some of your depth and detail. Just have a think. Do you have a particular area you need to work on? And which do you think it is and why? If you think, no, I've got one correct, why don't you need to focus on it? How did you get this right for this assessment task? Pause now and answer that question. Alrighty, what we're going to do now is we're going to go through the 3 sections of the response. The first one being on role. Many students made this far too confusing than what it needed to be. It was the role of the business for the stakeholder. Many people put it the other way around. So, for example, firms provide employment and income to employees, which will then impact their quality of life. Many students wrote about customers, and that was great, okay? But some of you, as I already said, wrote about it the wrong way. Some students provided a definition of stakeholders, and this was a very positive inclusion for this section. Some students, though, didn't even mention stakeholders. So if you are looking back at this section of your response, you might need to see, did I even use the language of the syllabus? Did I use stakeholders? And if you didn't, you should have. What you have here is a student's section on this first part on role, and they received an A. What I want you to have a go is have a read of this. Okay, I've told you it's an A-level section, but I want you to think about, what does this have that maybe yours doesn't? Okay, is there clear language? Is there evidence? Now, this is not perfect. You can see that there's still in-text feedback, so an A is not always perfect. But comparing yours to this, can you see maybe similarities? Maybe you did something well, like this one did, or maybe you have some areas that you need to look at. Can you have a go at these 2 questions now, please, in regards to role? All right, moving on to our second content section on classification. Many of you were able to identify the size, the industry, and the legal structure, and this is great. Okay, you were able to apply your business studies content to your real business. But many students lacked discussion, okay, meaning that you did not draw out potential benefits or limitations. And this links to that idea of depth and detail that some of us were missing. Some students who did really well in this section were able to say how it changed over time, okay? And that was a feature of better quality answers for this. So have a look at yours and think, did I just mention it for right now, where the company is right now? Or did I say it started as a partnership, but now it's a public company and hence? And that and hence part is the really important part, because that's where you draw out benefits or limitations. This sample here was very concise, and it was not overly detailed, but it was very clear. So if you have a read of this, you will see very obviously that it might be shorter than your section, but it was, as a marker, I got straight away that this student knew what they were talking about. It was clear, it was to the point, and they hit all the sections that was asked of them. So have a read of that now. Once you're done reading, I've got some questions here for you. And I really want you to think about your section on classification. Did you provide quantitative statistics, meaning, and you might want to annotate, number of employees? Did you state the industry clearly using the language of the syllabus? And this was something that was lacking in a lot of responses. If you named the industry or it remained the same, did you comment on this? Some people were commenting on the fact that legal structure changed, but did you comment that industry had remained the same? Many of you spoke about legal structure, which was fantastic, but many of you did not give the features. Okay, so answer that question, and then obviously this idea about benefits, limitations, and changes. So pause me now and have a go at answering these questions. If you answered predominantly no, maybe that will explain to you a little bit of why maybe that section wasn't as strong for you as some of your others. Okay, so we would have hoped that you were answering yes to most or the majority of those questions. All right, last content section was influences. Now this section was very large, and when Mr. Wilson and I discussed this task, we said asking you to do 4 influences was probably a lot. So I did take that into consideration when marking, that you probably couldn't go into a great amount of depth on all of them because you were constricted by the word limit. So please note that we did know that, and I did take that into consideration when marking. Pretty much everyone chose correct influences from the syllabus. Great job. That's our first hurdle, well done. Relevant influences most students, okay? Some students chose influences that maybe didn't fit quite well with their business, and hence they struggled really to show the connection between the theory and the real. Guys, this section is often where you became convoluted. It was really important that you showed the syllabus clearly. And in the HSC, this is something that we need to do. So this is a good stepping stone. The sample that I have for you here, okay, uses underlining, okay, to show the syllabus, which is great. If you just have a look at this section here, it says, an example of an internal influence is the products and services a business provides. That topic sentence or that point clearly identifies internal and the actual influence. So for me as a marker, I know the rest of this paragraph is going to be about internal influence of product. And that's a real strong part of this person's response. Guys, this is another example of an A section. Okay, you can see though, there is feedback. An A is never perfect. There is always work to do. So have a little read of this because it is quite clear there is some good integrated evidence, and and that's something we should all be working towards. Have a read of this and then think about your own and see if your clarity and your use of the syllabus language is maybe not as clear as this response here. Okay, so hopefully you've paused and reread this. You now need to think about your own influences section. I want you to rate your clarity. So what you can do is you can just draw a box around which face kind of represents how you felt. Okay? What I also want you to think about is this idea of what do you want to improve on? Was it your depth? Were you lacking depth? Was it your lacking of discussion? Did you not include evidence, stats, and quotes? Or did you really struggle to link the business theory to the real? So think about which maybe two of these are the most important for you to improve on in a future response. Alrighty, last section of feedback, bibliography. Guys, put your bibliography in alphabetical order, please. If you want to go to university, you need to get this right, okay? And we've got 2 years to get you up to scratch. That's easy fixed. No one should make that mistake again next time. The other thing I will say is depth and variety. If you are giving 3 sources at a stage 6 level, guys, it is not enough. Even 4 or 5, you are struggling. Many of you didn't reference the textbook. Many of you only had websites that were, let's say you did Qantas, that were only the Qantas website. What about newspaper articles? What about journals? What about a book from the library? Oh my goodness. Go to the library, borrow a book. Yes, they have other business textbooks up there. They have other resources. If you go up there, the ladies will offer to help you if you're struggling to format your bibliography. So this is something that is very easy to fix, yet lots of us rushed this and ended up getting in that C range for this because we did have formatting errors. So for next time that we have a hand-in task, I would hope that that is fixed. This example here is a good example. This was 1 of 3 pages though. So this sources, that's 1 page, there was another 2 like it. Just to give you an idea of what some students are providing in terms of how much research they've done. All right, to finish off, just a few little pro-business tips from me. 1, for business studies, identify your syllabus. It is key. Another thing I noticed in students' writing was that they were overwriting, and you might want to annotate this here off number 2, this idea of overwriting. Guys, only use text connectives when they're needed. Don't use furthermore, additionally at every start of at every sentence starter. It's not needed. It actually reduces the sophistication. And that kind of leads me to my 3rd pro-business tip is clarity. Don't convolute your writing. Don't try and sound so smart that you lose what you're actually trying to say. I would much rather you be clear and correct than using overly fancy language that might not even be relevant to business studies anyway. And a little point to add, my last one, comparative data is a winner. If you were to use comparative data over time or compare between businesses, this really gives you enough evidence to make a judgment or show discussion. So, guys, I hope that you have really reflected on your assessment task as much as you have looked at the feedback for the whole group. If you have any questions, obviously speak to your class teacher first, but I'm more than happy to speak to anyone as well. All right, Year 11, thanks so much.